What is going on, YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the fourth solo album by Lil Boosie, and basically this project is called Superbad: The Return of Boosie Bad Azz, and it came out in the late summer of 2009, practically like the early fall of 2009. And this project, like in some cases, I feel like this is really like Boosie's second album, just because his major label debut for the most part was Bad Azz from 2006, and this was the next official project that he did, which took 3 years. I think it might have come out sooner, but the thing about it was Lil Boosie got arrested in late 2008, and it led to his prison sentence that he was actually in prison for almost 8 years, but it wound up being like 4.5 just because for one thing, his prison charge was doubled, and then it was almost doubled again. But that was just kind of the concept. So in 2009, he went to prison for 2 years, which became 4 years. And so basically, this is the last thing he did while he was out of prison for a good chunk of the 2010s decade. And I would have to say this is a pretty excellent record. I mean, once again, Lil Boosie does not really pump this album out full of promotion. It only has one single, just like on Bad Azz. But I would have to say, just because it only has one single does not mean it doesn't have potential singles, which it definitely does. It's definitely the concept about it. Really, his longtime producer, Mouse on the track, is only on. He only drops 2 beats on this project, which is pretty surprising. There's a number of other producers on here, like The Runners and Nard and B, who kind of messes with Atlanta Cats, like folks like that. Some other cats on here, DJ Be Real, who I haven't heard of. But yeah, I would have to say this is a pretty good project. It's mostly kept to like the Trill ENT usual affairs. Like there's a cat on here. There's a cat on here named Lil Fat, and RIP. I know about him a little bit. I know he was part of the uh, Trillion T label. Webby's on here a couple of times. Jeezy's on here once. Bobby V and Trina are on here. So there is some good stuff. It has a bigger budget than last time on Bad Azz, but it still feels like such a kind of through the motions and short-lived project. And I think partially the reason behind that was just the fact that Boosie was heading to prison and he knew he had a looming court case, which is kind of unfortunate because I would have liked to have seen this album progress because this is really a glossy album. I mean, once again, I have to say this is an excellent project, and I really kind of feel like it probably could have been something heading into 2010. It probably would have headed into 2010 as a pretty excellent record had it had the promotion that it needed to. I don't know if there were other music videos, but at least the first single, Better Believe It, had a lot of triumphant kind of energy, and the hook was the budget behind Better Believe It was just a lot better than it was on Bad Azz. I feel like Zoom was an excellent cut, but I feel like Better Believe It was kind of in the territory of trying to get Boosie into like mainstream kind of territory as far as having that kind of vibe, but it just he had so many debaucheries kind of going on that it kind of sabotaged that concept. And it's really too bad because this I feel like his prison sentence kind of sabotaged like the makings of an excellent album as far as that kind of went. Not in terms of the quality and the product that we got, but just in terms of the expression behind it. Just because I feel like Boosie for the most part is just kind of a cat that seems like he always gets kind of snagged on like his come up as far as how some of those things kind of happen. But I read some critic reviews about this, and it had said that Lil Boosie made this record for the ladies in mind because he said that those are the ones that, at least back in those days, bought the CDs and that type of stuff. And this is definitely a package. Like when I reviewed Bad Azz last month, I kind of said that it had a good song palette and was kind of like had a bunch of vibes of like gave me Master P and Tupac vibes, and just had some good song structures and song palette and some of that type of stuff. And I feel like this is a lot more of a social and kind of night oriented one. This is definitely the flashier of the albums between this album and Bad Azz, but it does still kind of have like a few cuts on here that have some of that song palette. But I do feel like if you're looking for a widespread kind of more theatrics as far as like song palette, I feel like Bad Azz is the better record, even though this Superbad, The Return of Boosie Bad Azz, is the better record here just because the flashiness and beat production or beat selection, some of that. I do feel like there's a better song palette on Bad Azz. So it just kind of happens to be a thing. But this is pretty excellent. It's just more commercial, more ready for radio, has better budget, and just overall more exuberant times to be had. But that's just kind of the thing. So yeah, basically there was only one single on this project, and that was the lead single "Better Believe It," which has the lead single was the only single on this album that was "Better Believe It," and it has Young Jeezy on here and longtime pal Webby. So this one has a really nice hook. It's a real kind of Better Believe It has a really nice hook on here. It's auto-tuned and it's really a sprawling type song. Definitely a summer gem, and it's a hazy kind of slurred out kind of feel towards it. This has that slurred out kind of gauze-like feel towards it. This definitely similar to some summer heat. This is very kind of gauzy and just kind of hazed out and just kind of has like that kind of heat wave kind of energy just for like a stringent kind of like hot as hell kind of night in like July, August, something like that. Just kind of has that heat wave kind of energy. But I just like it. It's a different vibe from Lil Boosie just because he could have just came out with like another nightclub cut. He had some ones that were on this album like Levi's, Loose as a Goose, and Top Notch that he could have picked that probably would have. He has some songs on here like Levi's, Loose as a Goose, and Top Notch that probably could have been an excellent first single and lead single had that been the promotion that he chose for it. But this is just a good one. I feel like Better Believe It just has that kind of gauzy kind of summer energy towards it that just has like a lot of vibes as far as being able to just kind of have like, I mean, it almost kind of feels like Sullen. I would almost say it's almost kind of like a Sullen type tune where Boosie knew that he was going to prison and that sort of vibe. But I do like the concept is just as far as just being like a triumphant and just overall kind of balling out of control type tune for just like that kind of summer energy. But yeah, I just would have to say it's a good verse or it's a good song. Lil Boosie does a good job on this song. Jeezy and Webby back him up. They ride shotgun and do it pretty well on here. So that's just a good concept. It's too bad this song didn't chart. I feel like Zoom was probably the more ready to go type cut. That one just had a better energy and this overall more kinetic and like affable in that sort of sense. It's more, I feel like that one's just more toned towards the affability, but Better Believe It is just an overall more summer cut. It just has a more sprawling type feel towards it. It's just a little bit more of a song to cruise out to, where Zoom was kind of more of like a nightclub, just kind of dance type cut, doing the sort of jock and dance that Young Jock did in some of those type songs. It's more of a snap rap and ringtone rap kind of tune, but Better Believe It's just more sprawling and summer oriented. So there's 16 songs on this album. I'm going to talk about the 13 songs out of 16 I recommend. So basically, this is going to get a pretty rave score, and you'll see that momentarily. But the 13 songs I recommend would be Top Notch, Loose as a Goose, Levi's, Crayola, Better Believe It, Lord Have Mercy, Who Can Love You, I'm a Dog, Bankroll, Miss Kissing on You, Bullshit, My Avenue, and Clips and Choppers. So basically, some of the immediate club highlights, which I like that Lil Boosie decided to put more club cuts on here this time, whereas I felt like on Bad Azz from 2006, it really just boiled down to like songs like Set It Off and Zoom. This album is actually chock full of club songs. It just has a lot more commercial and stepping out kind of feel. One of the best beats on the album is one of the few beats that Mouse on the track, his longtime producer from Trill ENT, produced, and that's Top Notch. Has Mouse and Lil Fat on there. So this is an overall good one. It's a real slurred out, kind of dark crunk kind of club cut. This nice flashy song for a night out. This has an overall kind of crunchy energy. Sounds like some of the songs that Mouse produced around that time, like Busybody, that was on Paul Wall's album, and kind of like a darker version of Independent, some of that type of stuff. Just a real kind of crunchy beat. Mouse was really starting to get good around this time. It's just too bad that Boosie went to prison, because I know that they probably would have blown up a lot more. This definitely could have been a single Top Notch. Loose as a Goose is a really nice one. This is another one that I probably would have chose as like the third single or something. I probably would have went with Who Can Love You with Bobby V as like the second single. That would have probably been the crossover song to get Boosie some exposure. And then I probably would have went with Loose as a Goose as like the third single. But Loose as a Goose is like has a real distinct kind of beat. This real kind of jumps off the page and just kind of has the wow factor. It's just a really vanilla club song. Nice song to have some shots to at the club and that type of stuff. It's just an overall dance bop. It's definitely a song to get some chicks kind of dancing and grooving a little bit. It's definitely a better song to kind of have that. This is a song that where Lil Boosie kind of loosens up a bit. For the most part, it felt like he kind of had that more thug posturing where he was kind of more like a Southern Fried version of Tupac and kind of like a more recent version of Master P. But this is one where he just kind of loosens up and has a good jive towards him. Levi's is a regular stunting song. I definitely like this song. This is about, obviously the Levi's jeans, but I would just look after it saying that this is a regular kind of stunting song, very kind of flashy. It's a vanilla cut for dance clubs. I feel like this one is just kind of like Not quite as distinct as Loose as a Goose, but definitely one that can keep up with it. I would say that this is almost a swag song, if you can say that Lil Boosie had swag, but I kind of look after it where Levi's is just kind of a stunting song and just kind of like a regular kind of flashy kind of tune. It's definitely a vanilla cut for like a dance club, where it's just more where it can kind of be a dance cut, but it's just kind of more of like just a typical kind of night where you're just at the dance club, just kind of jiving a little bit, but it's just kind of in between where I see more women dancing to Levi's more so than guys dancing to it. But it's not like you can't. It's not like guys can't dance to it. It's just kind of more regular. But yeah, it's just a good one. Crayola is another good song. This is another kind of creeping nightclub song. This definitely has some creeping vibes towards it, similar to That's What They Like off of Lil Boosie's Bad Azz album. If you remember, that song off of Bad Azz has a very similar beat to that, almost identical wholesomely to it. It's just a kind of a gothic and dusky kind of jam. Just has that real kind of tittering and creeping kind of beat on there. I definitely like Crayola. It's a nice one. It's not quite as immediate as like Levi's and Loose as a Goose, Top Notch and Better Believe It, but it is a pretty good secondary and just late primary kind of highlight. I feel like Lord Have Mercy is like a club hustle song. So this is one where Lil Boosie kind of introduces some different topics where it's not just about purely the recreation. It's just kind of like talking about the struggle and that type of stuff, but it has an outgoing and kind of glittery beat. And this one's kind of like another late highlight where it's not quite as single ready and one of the most candid radio cuts that I would recommend, but it just has an overall good vibe to kind of have. It's like an extra backup cut. So Lil Boosie really packed these songs. This one just kind of has like Lord Have Mercy, just kind of has like a belly kind of beat on there. It's kind of sparkly and that type of stuff, but it's just an overall good one. And yeah, I just like the fact that Lil Boosie doesn't just have primary club songs, but he also has secondary club songs. That's some good stuff. Who Can Love You with Bobby V on the hook is like a really nice stepping out kind of song. It's very much a promo gem. Just kind of a date night kind of feel for that sort of thing. Just kind of stepping out for the night and going out and about and looking nice and that sort of thing. It's a very glitzy kind of song. Just a date night kind of feel. Just glitzy and glamorous and that type of stuff. Just an overall flashy kind of song. Bobby V, who was kind of popular in the late 2000s, does a pretty good job on the hook. I definitely think this could have been a single had Boosie not went to prison and been able to promote this album. I probably would have chosen it. And I'm a Dog is like I'm a Dog is another type of a club song. This one's kind of an offhanded night venue song, which by offhanded I mean it's just not the primary pick, but it's definitely one in like the rotation, but just kind of later in the rotation at like a standard night. I would say it's not really a primary night, but just kind of a good stock for a stepping out kind of song. Maybe like the sixth or seventh song you'd hear or something like that, or just, and that's just if you hear it by Lil Boosie. I'd say it'd probably be later on in the list if you're hearing numerous kind of songs for stepping out. But I just would have to say it's just an overall good one. This kind of like, yeah, I'm a Dog kind of has like a haunted kind of feel towards it, but it's also kind of a glittery kind of song. And this is kind of like this sparkling, but this kind of has like a darker kind of feel towards it. I like the fact that Lil Boosie kind of synchronizes with some dark productions on here. There are some songs like My Avenue and Top Notch, I'm a Dog, and like Crayola and even Mind of a Maniac that really have some darker kind of productions that just suit him pretty well. I like that he kind of has these gothic vibes. It's just not impressionable just because, despite the fact that Boosie's from Louisiana and does the dirty South, it's interesting to kind of have some of these more gothic kind of feels towards it. He's just kind of almost like a sort of Dark Knight in sort of ways, just in that sort of sense. Is yeah, I would say kind of like a variation of like a Dark Knight in those sorts of ways, just in terms of that concept. Bankroll is a nice one. It's a money song, but it has like a social feel towards it. So it's interesting that Lil Boosie has a song just talking about money, but he manages to make it come off as like a social and kind of club cut on here. It's another one for stepping out. It's just a creeping kind of haunted song, but it's also a song for being out and about. So it just kind of has that vibe. Or sometimes these money songs are just kind of about more day to day and just kind of getting money and keeping it and that type of stuff. But Lil Boosie's kind of flossing and flexing while he does it. So that makes Bankroll kind of interesting, just because he could have made it more introverted, but he chose not to. So that's a good one. Miss Kissing on You is a surprising highlight on here. This has Trina and a chick named Cade on the hook, who I don't know who that is, but Trina's on here, who doesn't always oftenly get guest features. So that's a pretty good song. It's just an overall nice serenade. I definitely think this is like a plush ladies joint. It's just a sugar sweet kind of serenade. Definitely like the concept of it. Just really kind of sugary, saccharine in like a good way. And I just overall feel like this is just a nice syrupy kind of one for a good concept with the ladies and that sort of thing. Definite nice, probably I would almost, I mean, I think both the ladies' songs on here really did their job. They just happened to, the Bobby V one and the Trina one both did pretty excellent job as far as that kind of went. So these are both some good ones. And there's some ruminating cuts on here, a couple of ruminating songs. Those are the next ones I'm going to talk about. Bullshit is a real ruminating cut. This one definitely gives me like Tupac and Tech Nine vibes. This really feels like a day commute kind of song. It's very regular sort of song that Tech Nine would make with a song like Yada Yada or Tupac would make. Just one of his regular kind of album cuts. Just kind of like a song that Tupac would make, like Picture Me Rolling or something like that. That just has a lot of kind of introspection about it and just kind of more ruminating, but just in a compelling kind of way. So I like the fact that Boosie retained some of his previous strengths from 2006 and managed to retain them, because not every song on here is a club song. There's a majority of them are, and he definitely has some more. And Boosie definitely has a more commercial vibe this time, but he does have some of his prior songwriting. It's just not showcased as much this time. But it is Bullshit's a nice one. Another ruminating song that's kind of similar to Bullshit is Clips and Choppers. Is definitely a ruminating type tune, and this one just has a real kind of breezy and whimsical kind of beat, despite the fact that it's about having GATs and AKs and that type of stuff. Clips and Choppers. It's a casual kind of midday energy kind of tune, just going throughout the day, just kind of standard regular day in that sort of sense, just with guns in mind. But it is a nice one, so that's kind of the concept there. And then My Avenue is the last one that I recommend, but this is a really excellent kind of tune. This is a different vibe also, where most of these commercial kind of stepping out tunes were kind of for like a nightclub and a venue. This one's kind of a house party bop. I really like the concept of this being like a flashy kind of house party gem with like some Liddy energy and just an overall good jive towards it. And Lil Fat and then an extra cat on here, Lil Trill are on here. So that Lil Trill is another cat that was in the process of blowing up from Trill ENT. So that's a good concept there, just being able to get it. I definitely like My Avenue. It's a good house party gem and just overall good song to kind of have if you're just more local and at the house and those kind of vibes for stepping out and just having some good times. So yeah, that takes care of the 13 songs I recommend. So talk about the only three songs I didn't recommend, which is just Mind of a Maniac, Pain, and No Mercy. I mean, for the most part, Pain was kind of like a song that, like, true to the song title, Pain, this is just kind of like a real kind of sluggish, just kind of down tempo song about talking about the hardships and struggle and that type of stuff in like a painful aspect. I would have liked it probably better if it had had a little bit more of a jive towards it. I think this song was really trying to convey like the pain of like the of what Boosie was talking about, but this was really such a kind of morose kind of song almost that it just kind of was off-putting in terms of like having some jive to it to make it more compelling to listen to. Mind of a Maniac was trying to be like kind of like a Master P kind of like introspective ruminating kind of tune, but it just was, the beat was not quite as interesting enough to really get to that vibe. I mean, this was the most popular song on Spotify. This is the song with the most plays, but I just didn't connect with it as much. I just didn't connect with Mind of a Maniac as much. And then No Mercy was basically like one of the few mixtape Boosie and street cuts on here, but I just didn't pick up on that energy as much. I mean, I like quite a bit of this album, but I couldn't see too many instances where I would listen to No Mercy as much. I did used to like that song in the past, but I just don't connect with it as much now. But yeah, I mean, basically, this whole album is pretty excellent. So, me liking 13 songs out of 16, I'm going to go ahead and give this album a 10 out of 10. It's just that good. Chock full of plenty of stepping out moments and just overall good song palette and topics as far as the writing, the lyrics, and just the overall vibes and atmospheres that you get from some of these. Just has some good context, great production on here, great cadence and expression. That's how it's kind of talked about. It's just an overall good one. I feel like this is a supersized version of Bad Azz from 2006. It just outdid it in just about every way. The only real thing about it is just the fact that it just didn't have the sheer kind of topic variety Bad Azz, but it's not like I'm complaining about that because I feel like this is just a better album. I feel like what I complained about on Bad Azz, which is I wanted more stepping out moments and this kind of more flashiness and kind of weekend type feels, you got it this time. And there was some of the Boosie from prior. He does have some records like Pain is a song palette that is, even though I didn't look for a song like Pain, that is kind of another palette of a song that has some expression behind it in terms of different vibes. And No Mercy is kind of a street cut, and Mind of a Maniac is kind of like a similarity to like a kind of ruminating masterpiece song. So those ones I didn't connect with are just more for the kind of atmosphere of them just not being as social for me. But in terms of the concept behind it, they are at least other songs that do kind of have some palette for folks that do miss some of that expression that was on Bad Azz. So it's just kind of the vibe towards it. I definitely think there are plenty of songs like Top Notch, My Avenue, Levi's, Bankroll, Loose as a Goose. These are all great, excellent stepping out kind of tunes. There's plenty of songs for the weekend, some of those type moments over half the album. There's plenty of songs that I listed that have these type feels, and a lot of songs, even songs like I'm a Dog and Lord Have Mercy have some of those kind of stepping out feels also in Bankroll and just moments like that. So this would have to say 10 out of 10. In terms of the social score, I'll go ahead and give the social score a 10 out of 10 also, just because I feel like it really kind of has that particular vibe. It's an overall good expression of an album, and this is a supersized version. The only reason why I wouldn't give it a 10 is just because Lil Boosie was just not. Maybe I'll give it a 9. I'll give the social score a 9.5 out of 10, just because it's chock full of good songs, but it's just the fact that it didn't get the promotion it needed. It was kind of cast aside is because this album came out right on the cusp of Lil Boosie going to prison for half a decade. So that kind of sabotaged it, and it just felt like it just kind of went through the motions and was forgotten about by the time Lil Boosie had been in prison for even a couple of months. So it was just gone just like that. And then by the time he got out, the promotion was well passed over, and just felt like it just didn't get the attention. The single didn't chart properly. There wasn't a second single, and just overall, the whole album cycle just got botched just because of his prison sentence. So it gets a 9.5 out of 10, but I give it that just because the quality of this album is definitely there. In terms of the future, like Lil Boosie's been dropping projects. He dropped the project last month. He's kind of going through some court cases right now, but he does have some excellent projects. So I'm going to review some more. There are some other ones like Incarcerated that I want to review and that type of stuff. So yeah.